Okay, so we are reading Aghora, the left hand of God. We are on the preface, page number 11 of the book.
Essential to the production of any siddhi are mantra, yantra, and tantra. In the journey towards siddhi, mantra is the energy which moves your vehicle, the yantra according to the roadmap, tantra. In an industrial analogy, the finished product, siddhi, emerges when the raw material, mantra, is fed into the milling machines, yantra, according to a fixed process, tantra.
So,
A
what does
mantra.
this mean? Any kind of puja that we are doing is basically following the same principle. Okay. So, what are we doing? We are chanting a mantra and you have a yantra. So, yantra is maybe a statue, is also a yantra. You have many of these yantras which are etched onto boards. That's a two-dimensional figure. And the murtis or the ideals become three-dimensional yantras. Okay. And then you're following a tantra. So you're following a ritual which empowers the ideal becomes the focus of your attention, which allows you to travel into altered states of consciousness. Okay, so this is what it means. So he says over here, the mantra is the energy which moves your vehicle. So you're chanting. The yantra is according to the roadmap. Mantra is the energy which moves your vehicle, the yantra. So the yantra becomes your mode of travel. So it becomes the mode through which you go into an altered state of consciousness. Over here, travel doesn't mean you're going from point A to B. Travel means you're going into an altered state of consciousness.
A mantra is a collection of sounds which, when pronounced, their vibrations provide energy to the yantra. Sound appears on the electromagnetic spectrum as one variety of energy which can be manipulated by the tantric. There are three main types of mantra.
So now, what does it mean over here? A mantra is a collection of sounds. When pronounced, their vibration provides energy to the yantra. Now, all of us have seen the experiments done with cymatics. Okay. So, a certain frequency of sound is created and it creates a pattern. The pattern becomes the yantra. So, the sound is empowering the yantra. Okay. Now, when the sound is empowering the yantra, and you perform a certain ritual while that yantra is in existence, it allows you to go into an altered state of consciousness. So there are three main kinds of mantras.
A. Descriptive. Usually in Sanskrit, these mantras describe either the process undergone, the desired goal, or both. B. Meaningless. Aggregation of sounds which have no known meaning in any human language. C. Bijas. Individual nasalized syllables.
So again, a certain mantra may be describing a process which you use to use with the tantra, when you're doing the tantra. Meaningless. So making sounds. Okay. You will find this making sounds everywhere. Babies make these sounds. When we do resonant tuning in the Monroe process, you can make any sound that you want. And let me tell you, it is there in all cultures. So meaningless sounds. And the Bij mantras means that there are certain specific sounds which will take you to specific effect. So for example, every chakra has a Bij mantra. When you just use that mantra, it will automatically connect you to that particular chakra. So like that, every mantra has an essence. You can shorten every mantra to a symbol, which is the Bij of that particular mantra.
Bij means seed, and these seed sounds produce fruit according to the Bij Vriksh Nyay, or the law of seed and tree. The frequent repetition of these bijas eventually results in a sort of standing wave. permanently energizing either an external yantra or some area of the aspirant's brain, resulting in the continuous production of a specific effect, one which is coherent with the personality invoked. Four types of Vani or speech exist for the pronunciation of mantra.
So now what does it mean here? Every mantra has a symbol or a beej, which is the shortening of the entire mantra. Okay, so that's the beej. Now, when I plant a beej or I plant a seed, I can get a tree out of that particular seed. So the entire mantra is in that seed, in the beej mantra. Okay, the frequent repetition of these bijas eventually results in a sort of standing wave, permanently energizing either the external yantra or some part of the aspirant's brain. So every part of our brain is also vibrating at a certain frequency. Now, if that frequency of vibration is constantly affecting the brain or is constantly resonating with the brain, it will naturally affect that part of the brain. So when I keep repeating a mantra, it will affect that part, right? So what are we doing in hemisync? We are also affecting the brain with the sounds that we are hearing, which takes us into an altered state of consciousness. So this is exactly what he's saying over here, and it creates a standing wave. So a standing wave is a wave that constantly keeps bouncing. So when we are using hemisync, this is exactly what we are doing. A standing wave gets created inside the cranium. And when that happens, it takes us again into an altered state. Okay. Resulting in a continuous production of a specific effect which is coherent with the personality invoked. So now everything has a certain vibratory frequency. Now, if I'm invoking or I'm using a certain frequency, it will naturally affect my brain in that particular frequency and it will invoke a certain personality in me. Now, the more I use it, the more that personality will start affecting my system. So, we all have seen that when we attend the excursion workshop, certain personality changes also start taking place. The more we use the hemisync process, we find we become cooler, we become calmer, our intuitive ability starts to go up, the ability to be present starts to go up. So what is happening? The hemisync principle is creating a shift in our personality by invoke, which is being invoked by the binaural beats, the multi-layered binaural beats, which actually make up the hemisync process. Okay, so this is exactly what we are doing. Now, if we were doing this on a day-to-day basis on with ourself, then hitting that exact precise frequency becomes a problem. So it may take decades for us to achieve these states of consciousness. But with hemisync, because it's very, very structured, it takes us immediately into that altered state very fast and in a very, very stable and sustained manner. So then what happens is that we can exercise, we can connect to that particular state of consciousness, which over here he says the specific effect, one which is coherent with the personality invoked. So the personality invoked is what? It's also the state of consciousness that is being invoked. This is actually really well given.
Four types of Vani or speech exist for the pronunciation of mantra. A. Vaikhari, vocal speech. Madhyam, nasalized speech. Pashyanti, pure mental repetition. And Para, telepathic speech in which only the intention but not the sound is conveyed.
So again, when we start, it has to be vocalized because you have to learn the pronunciation. You have to learn how to chant the mantra to get it absolutely correct. Then you internalize it, the nasal. It's when you are doing it out of the nasal, it is a very much like the hemisync process where the sound is created inside the inside the cranium. There's a vibration which is which is created inside the head, right? When we vocalize, it's going outside. With the nasal, it is inside. Then you go into mental repetition. So you're repeating it, but you're not making a sound with it. So now when I'm repeating it inside my brain or I'm repeating it mentally, again, because I have used it vocally and it has stimulated a part of my brain by using it vocally. When I repeat the mantra mentally, it will automatically stimulate that part of my brain and again take me to that altered state. The next state is I don't even have to repeat the mantra. I take a certain part of it and I just mentally do it. And it's like magic. For example, people who've attended the excursion, when you practice making the reball, for some time you have to actually mentally do it. Take a deep breath, think of the bright shiny ball, this, that, and then send the reball. After some time, you see something and boom, it's gone. We have shifted into para. So in the beginning, what do you have to do? You have to take a deep breath, think of that, and then you do it. So that is vocal speech. Then is nasal. You're just doing it mentally. I mean, you're saying the words, but you're not really speaking it out. The next step is you just think of the process and then you do it. And the third step it is intuitively it happens. You don't even have to think of it, which is para.
The more subtle the speech, the deeper its effect on both the individual and the surrounding environment. Just as a laser produces coherent light, a human brain can produce coherent energy when a single frequency bij is selected and is amplified appropriately with yantra and tantra.
So again, the more subtle a thing is, the more powerful it becomes. This is what homeopathy works at, how homeopathy also works. I don't know how many of you attended Devanshi's talk yesterday. Unfortunately, I could not join, but I'm sure she must have mentioned not even one molecule of the original substance is there in the medicine, but the subtle vibrations of the medicine of the that original substance are present in the medicine. That is how it works. So over here, he clearly states that the subtler process you use between the four that we just did above, the vocal speech, the nasal speech, the pure mental repetition, and just telepathic intent. Okay, the subtler it is, the more powerful it becomes. So when you're looking at doing any kind of puja, when first you have the first step, that is you're actually chadhawing the flower, right? And you're repeating the song or you're repeating the mantra or you're repeating the bhajan verbally. The next step is you're chadhawing the flower, but you're just mentally, it's nasalizing, you're repeating it internally. The next step is that you're chadhawing the flower, but you're mentally chanting the mantra. And the next step is you're not putting the flower, you're just happening intuitively. So this is the result of Mansik Puja. And Mansik Puja is at the highest level of puja, where many times what happens is when a person is doing Mansik Puja, he is chadhawing the curds. The curds are not there. But when he chadhaws it, the curds appear. Okay. Because you have developed that means of materialization. You're working at a higher state of consciousness. And that actually happens. Okay. This is what he's talking over here. So when the human brain produces a coherent energy with a single frequency, which is the bija, is selected and amplified appropriate with the yantra and the tantra. So automatically, whatever kriya you are doing starts to manifest in the material world also at times.
The yantra is the crucible in which the herb, mineral, animal, or human is prepared through the mantra's energy.
So again, the yantra, whenever you're making a yantra, a particular chanting has to be done, a particular process has to be used to energize the yantra to become the vehicle by which you just focus your energy on that yantra and boom, you're taken into an altered state. Now, most of the people or most of the yantras which are being made today are not following this principle, because the people who are making the yantras or the idols or the designs that you have on plates, etc., they are not of that level of consciousness to energize and empower the yantra. Okay, so that's why where the trick lies, to be able to empower the yantra. But today, getting those people is very, very difficult.
The yantra contains the energy, reflecting it back upon itself until it can accumulate to that point when, as in a laser, it of its own accord projects itself.
So now what happens? The more the yantra is used, the more powerful the yantra becomes. And then it starts to radiate a field around itself and create the effect that was intended by the creator.
The projection assumes the form of the deity appertaining to the bij repeated. When mantras other than the bijas are employed, the energy will continue to accumulate until it is used or is otherwise discharged.
So what does this mean? The yantra creates that energy, or is it becomes a reservoir of that energy. Now that energy, by the person who is able to connect with that energy, can use that energy to manifest or create something.
Here, the yantra acts something like a capacitor. Yantras are frequently diagrams drawn on birch bark, crystals, or copper plates, or they can be drawn with powder or sand. Images may be used as yantras, but the best yantra is said to be the human body.
So again, images can also be used. You have these plates on which these things are etched. You can etch it on a crystal. So there are many ways in which you can make the tantras. Okay, the yantras. Like when you look at the like Nicholas Castellan, Carlos Castellanda and all, he talks about these shamans. The shamans make dream catchers. So every culture has a process of making these yantras. But the human body is so precise, and we've been constantly talking about it, that the human body has such subtle perceptions that the kind of perceiving that the human body can do, the kind of effect that the human body can achieve, the actually the body is a fantastic yantra. It has everything in it. You have to know how to activate it and then to use it.
Tantras are the three main varieties according to the aspirant's capabilities external, internal, and mixed. The Pashu or animalistic type of aspirant is by nature greatly attached to the enjoyment of external sense objects and so should perform external worship to control these urges to outwardness. The Divya or divine type tends to be introverted and need not bother with external ritual. These aspirants require antaryag, internal sacrificial rites.
So now what this is attempting to explain is tamas, rajas, and sattva. Now, if you are operating from the materialistic principle, then there is tamasic pravritti involved in it. So you have to do physical, yagyas. You have to do physical puja. You have to do physical things. But as you become more sattvic, then the internalized stuff starts going on. So you can imagine I'm doing something, and the sacrificial fire is internalized. Instead of doing the process externally, you can start doing it internally. Now, of course, it depends a lot on what your pravritti is. That is, what is your state of consciousness. Whether an external puja is good for you or an internal process, or I mean, I'm just saying puja, it can be any process. Whether an external process needs to be done or it can be an internal process.
The Vit or heroic type can perform both external and internal worship. Sorry, the Veera or heroic type can perform both external and internal worship competently with thorough attention to detail. Everyday life becomes a sacrificial rite for a Veer, which with each act, an act of worship hidden at all times with the causal observer, casual observer. For a Veer, the entire world is a graveyard filled with the dead. A true tantric regards every human being, including himself, as already dead. since the fact of birth makes death inevitable. For a tantric, and even more so for an Aghori, the entire world is his playground and his temple.
So what does this imply? That a person who is evolved, self realized, or who is aware, the world is a playground. Why? Because actually it is an illusion. So, over here, what he's saying is that since anything that is created will always not be available, it will always disappear, it will always die. So they consider everything already dead. So they are not scared of doing anything. They operate out of fearlessness, and they perform whatever ritual, etc., that they have to do internally as well as externally, but they don't show what they are doing. So what they do becomes hidden. Okay. They do it in a way that for a casual observer, they will not even realize what is happening.
Still, rituals which make use of literal corpses and skulls are available for those who wish to get quick results. Such practices are part of the marg or left hand path, which is the violent counterpart of the Dakshin marg or right hand path. The Dakshin marg is meant for those who seek steady progress with reduced dangers of setbacks. The Vam marg is described as Shigra, Ugra, and Tivra, or fast, terrible, and intense. On this path, the chances for catastrophe are great unless a powerful guru's protection is provided. The sexual rituals which have made Tantra notorious are part of Vam marg.
So with everything, Shivangla, you have to handle your speaker. So with everything, if you take a quicker process, it is always more dangerous. For example, again, I keep repeating the example of climbing Mount Everest. If you want to climb Mount Everest fast, then it is full of risks. Otherwise, you take step by step progress, right? So you have the left-handed path which wants to achieve things quickly. But when you achieve things quickly, the base is not created. If the base is not created, then you have nothing to stand on. The foundation is not there. Whereas the right handed path gently takes you step by step into the process. So a foundation gets created for the process. Okay. Now, of course, literally using corpses and skulls, that means that you're doing certain rituals, you're doing certain kriyas, which will enhance your process of achieving that state of consciousness that makes you more powerful or makes you more transcendental, etc. And the other fact over here is that the you see this sexual act is an act of procreation. It's an act of creation. That means creativity is involved in that. So many times the use of sexual positions, the sexual act can can hasten your development, and that is part of the Vambar. That is part of the left-handed path, but that also has a lot of power. Okay, it has a lot of power in the sense that you can actually control your physical release and transmute it, in the sense that whatever when you don't release, you don't have the orgasm gets internalized and that power gets channelized, which raises the energy level of the entire body and an entire system. The ojas starts to go up. When you have an orgasm, the ojas is released externally. Here, the ojas is internalized.
The ritual in which sex appears, which is known as Panch. The ritual in which sex appears, which is known as Panchasamakar, is actually of three types, depending again upon the class of the celebrant, and in only one type does actual sexual intercourse occur. That version is meant only for tamasic people. tamas being mental inertia or dullness. The intensity of the five, pancha means five, articles of worship, meat, fish, parched grain, wine, and sex, overwhelms the dullness of the mind with stimulation. If the aspirant has been properly prepared, this increased mental energy can assist his or her spiritual evolution. An ill prepared aspirant will be overcome by stimulation and will descend into debauchery.
So the act, the sexual act, when performed with the tantric principles, is used as a means to go into an altered state of consciousness. But if the person is not ready, then it can, it can create problems. He can become a sexual addict. He can start indulging in a lot of eating and gluttony, and all that can start happening.
Rajasic people, rajas means mental activity, have active minds which must be properly channeled. They need less stimulation and more control, and use ginger, radish boiled as opposed to parched grain, coconut milk, and flowers in their pancha. Sattvic people naturally enjoy ample sattva, balance of mind and alertness, and do not require external aids to worship. They utilize the meat of silence, the fish of breath control, the grain of concentration techniques, the wine of God intoxication, and the coitus of one's ego with the absolute.
So again, tamas is more gross, rajas is less gross, sattva becomes more subtle.
The Sanskrit terminology used to describe the Panchamakar hides this meaning beneath its exterior. For example, fish stands for breath control because one's two nostrils are referred to in yogic terminology as rivers. Since they are continuously flowing, the right is called the Ganga and the left the Yamuna. Just as fish swim in rivers, the breath swims through the nostrils, and holding the breath, Keval Kumbhak, is equivalent to eating the fish.
So this is just 1 second, huh? Please just hold on.
Panchmakar is only one of many tantric rituals, but it illustrates well a fundamental tantric concept, Bhuta Shuddhi. The physical universe is a permutation of five great elements: earth, water, air, fire, and ether, equivalent respectively to the solid, liquid, and gaseous states of matter, heat, which transforms matter from one state into another, and the field in which all activity takes place.
So what does this mean over here? Okay, everything that you see around us is a combination of the five elements. Nothing can be made without these five elements. And one who can gain control over the elements can manifest anything anywhere. Okay, so we have these people who'll say that they'll just wave their hand in the air and a rasgulla will come. What have they mastered? They've mastered the ability to manipulate the elements.
To achieve universal harmony, these five elements must be harmonized.
The feet fashion is good. Down.
To achieve universal harmony, these five elements must be harmonized. Panchamakar is a fast, intense way to do this. Meat stands for earth, fish for water, wine for fire, grain for air, and sex for ether. When one reaches the stage of balance in which these inputs cause no disequilibrium of consciousness or metabolism, it is much less likely that any other fluctuation in the five elements will cause disharmony. And a state of health has been reached, since health is balance and disease is imbalance. This health is infinitely more permanent than ordinary health.
So once that internal balance of all the elements has taken place, any kind of illness is always an imbalance of these five elements in your system. The moment precise balance is achieved, then everything will start functioning properly.
Sorry, there's been some. To deal with only five elements through essential in every tantric sadhana would be too mechanistic, and tantric authorities advocate personification in accompaniment. Rather than seek to extirpate their emotions entirely as yogic practitioners do, tantrics magnify their emotions and transfer them entirely to a deity, a personified cosmic force. All the aspirants' natural propensities can spend themselves in this devotee deity relationship, avoiding suppression of any desires which might erupt later to disrupt the harmony.
So you create your deity. The tantric actually creates the deity who he then starts to worship and starts to empower, and then the deity again empowers him. So what happens? You are transferring energy there, then the energy gets transferred back to you. This is so much like what we were reading in Celestine Prophecy in the eighth insight, where you give a person energy, or in the ninth insight, you just consciously focus on another person and give the energy to that person, and that person again focuses back on you and gives your energy back to you. So what is happening? You're creating a cycle where the energy keeps expanding and increasing. So this is the same process which is being used here.
Thus, Tantra insists there is no mukti, freedom from delusion, without bhukti, enjoyment. Enjoyment refers to the acceptance of all phenomena which may occur to an individual, be they good, enjoyable, or bad, painful. The aspirant relies on the magnanimity of nature personified as the deity to protect and provide.
Okay.
Yoga
So,
and
so
Vedanta
what,
aim.
what so what does this mean over here, right? Nothing is bad and nothing is good. Everything is. So when you're going into tantric practices, every practice is considered valid. And the key here is that you need to be joyful. You need to enjoy whatever process is taking place. So joy becomes very, very important. And you can only enjoy when you accept everything, the good and the bad simultaneously.
The aspirant relies on the magnanimity of nature personified as the deity to protect and provide. Yoga and Vedanta aim directly at mukti, which was appropriate in earlier ages when the mundane world was less demanding. Tantra is more practical for today's world. Ayurveda is meant for those who desire only bhukti or unrestricted sensory enjoyments. It was promulgated as a separate doctrine because many today cannot comprehend health's spiritual aspects.
So when you are healthy, okay, automatically today, if you want to really become very, very powerful or very, very spiritualistic, health also has to play a part in it. Okay. So there are various spiritual aspects to health also.
The doctrine of Kundalini and the Chakras is associated with that of the five great elements. When the elements have been thoroughly purified in an individual, then the Kundalini Shakti, a goddess in her own right, has a free path upwards through the chakras to meet and mate with her Shiva in the brain.
So
Each
today, when we heard the talk by Shamji Bhatnagar, he said the micro chakras, right? Now, there are three channels. The Shushubna, the energy actually rises through the Shushubna. Now, if there are blockades in the Shushubna, the energy does not have a clear pathway for transmutation. Now, through sadhana, through kriya, you can actually open up the channels so that when the burst of energy comes with the process of the kundalini rising, it has a clear path to actually start rising.
Each of the 5 lower chakras is the seat of the subtle form of one element, and only when they are purified and harmonized can the Kundalini free herself from their grasp. Herbs can be useful to assist in this process, as can mercury. Even disembodied spirits can be useful since they churn the nervous system to the high pitch necessary to withstand the tremendous might of Kundalini, who is the individual equivalent of the cosmic Adya. Each aspirant's perception of Kundalini will differ according to their innate emotional makeup, and therefore, many forms of the goddess are available for worship.
So, again, we can use herbs, and many times the spirits, when they energize us, they affect our nervous system, they affect our energy field. They can actually help us in achieving the state of consciousness that we want. But each of us, as the it's like the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. So each of us reflects the macrocosm. That means everything is in us. So there is another concept called that the holographic universe. What is a hologram? I don't know. Most of you must have heard about me talking about the holograph. When you have a hologram, it's a plate. Now, if I cut the plate in half and I shine the laser light in that particular way, both the plates will give the complete light. So, like that, if you take one cell in our body, the entire blueprint of our body system is in every and each cell. The cell may be in the skin, it may be in the stomach, it may be the intestine. But that cell has the potential to create our entire body once again. Okay. So, like that, he says that withstand the tremendous might of Kundalini, which who is the individual equivalent of the cosmic Adya. So the whole cosmic energy is reflected in us also in the form of Kundalini. And he says that each and every aspirant, according to their growth, according to the way that they have evolved, will represent by a different deity. So depending on your evolution, you will have the deity which will help you to be able to go to the next step.
Whatever the form, the aspirant must interact with Kundalini on a personal basis. Some treat her as a sister, some as friend, advisor, or wife. A few regard her as a 16-year-old daughter, and the Aghoris treat her as a servant.
So now, whatever energy we have, ultimately, if we are going to use that energy, we need to develop a relationship with that energy. This also happens where even Krishna Bhagwan is worshipped by some people as Bal Gopal, as a child, okay, as their child. Some treat him as a sakha, as a friend. Some treat him as a guru. So every deity, you create a different relationship with that particular deity.
But my teacher Vimlanand opined that it is best to treat her as a mother. In her aspect as Adya, she is mother of all worlds and all beings. We emerge from her, exist in her, and eventually dissolve into her again. Moreover, a friend may fail you, a wife may quarrel with you, and a servant might rebel against you, but your mother will never desert you. Vimlanand told me, always sit in the lap of the Divine Mother. Let her do everything for you. Rely on her totally, and she will never forsake you. If you try to do things on your own, you will fall and hurt yourself. Only she can take care of you. The greater your bhakti, devotional love, for her, the faster will be your progress.
So Vimlanand says that you treat her like a mother. Now, parents, they are the only people who will always look out for you, who will always look for the best for you. Any other relationship will have its flaws. But generally speaking, the mother child relationship is one of the purest relationships that we will have ever in our lives.
Bhakti is essential because she is really you. You are a minuscule part of her, and you must love yourself to make progress. Even the masculine deities are all part of her. Whether the tantric aspirant worships a male or female deity depends on the guru, but the outcome will be the same. Kundalini will reunite with her Shiva. First mantra, yantra, and tantra will be used to create the form of the deity in the aspirant's consciousness. Then the devotee and the deity will be together continuously observing their stipulated relationship, son, mother, husband, wife, or whatever. This is called Tanmayata. Eventually, Tadrupat occurs in which all but a few vestiges of the devotee's original personality are eliminated and only the deity's personality remains.
So, what you are worshipping, what you are creating, is a pure form of yourself. And ultimately, the more you focus your attention, the more you focus your thoughts in a particular aspect, that is what you will become. So we have all seen, and we've been discussing this over and over again, that our thoughts create our reality. So depending on what our thoughts are, our reality gets created. Now, if I'm focusing on creating a deity which is operating at a higher state of consciousness, and I'm constantly thinking of that deity, naturally that is going to affect me. So I am giving the deity energy, the energy will come back to from the deity to me. And ultimately, what will happen? Because my thoughts are totally focused on the deity, I will tend to become the deity. All my actions will be directed by the deity. Everything that I'm doing will happen because of the deity. So that ego that we have, that gets diminished, although a little bit will always remain till you really transcend duality totally. But mostly you will become that deity. So who you tend to become whoever you think about the most. Now, unfortunately, most of us, who are we thinking of the most? The people who have hurt us. So we tend to become like them only. The idea is to focus our attention on a higher plane, on a higher aspect. Focus on something which is bigger than us. Okay, that's what will make us rise in consciousness. Select a higher goal, basically.
For the Panchamakar ritual to be successful, a couple who seek to perform it must first perfect Shiv Lata Mudra, a practice in which all sexual desire is eliminated. The male identifies entirely with Shiva and the female with Shakti, and this attitude must be held for 3 hours at a time to ensure success. The Tantras says, Shivo Bhutva Shivam Yajet. First become Shiva, and then you will be able to worship Shiva properly. When this self identification with the deities is complete, then the consumption of fish, meat, grain, wine, and the sexual act are no longer acts of indulgence, but become sacraments because the deities themselves partake directly.
So when you totally identify when you totally identify with the deity, then the deity has the power to transmute anything. So whatever you may consume will not affect your state of consciousness, because it's the deity who is consuming and transforming it into the energies which are required for us to do that particular act, or to perform whatever aspect of life that we are looking to perform.
The merely curious have no business dabbling in Tantra, but some so called gurus in the West encourage their half baked followers to do so. Such self-delusive activity reinforces the crystallizations of the personality, which prevents spiritual progress. Tantric rituals are sacrificial rites. Though herbs, minerals, and animals are used as offerings, they are secondary to the true offering, the sacrifice of one's limited self into the sacrificial fires of penance. In the Panchamakar ritual, the female is the fire into which the male offers semen, just as clarified butter is offered in Orthodox fire worship.
So every act becomes a spiritual act, okay, which is taking you into a higher state of consciousness.
Ordinary sex is no sacrifice. When two people come together to copulate, they usually seek gratification for themselves, the slaking of their lust. Perhaps indirectly, they will try to satisfy their partners. Tantric sex becomes possible only when one has totally effaced one's own personality and offers oneself for the gratification of the deity, the universe incarnate.
So again, it's totally based on sacrificing, on the pleasure, on the benefit to the other, not being selfish to gratify yourself.
This is one reason Tantra has always been a close guarded secret. The danger of abusable knowledge falling into the hands of the unworthy has limited its spread. One should never seek to practice classical Tantra without a guru because no Tantric texts exist which provide thoroughly accurate details of any ritual. Each text omits an essential step or includes false information, and only through a guru can the reality handed down from teacher to disciple over generations be known.
So again, whenever we are performing a certain ritual, a guide is very, very important. This, it cannot be uh, emphasized enough. Unfortunately, these guides are not really available now. That's something that we can't help.
It's 3:17 now, Bhaiya.
Yeah, okay, so let's stop over here. I think the preface is really, really detailed. It's not what the text, the book is much easier, huh? So don't.
I was just wondering. I was going to ask you, is it like this, the whole book? This is like really heavy, heavy stuff.
Yeah, but I think this preface really sets the grain
Yeah,
of the
okay.
entire process.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, anyone, anything to say?
How come Mukul hasn't done it with us? Mukul?
I don't know. I've not done it.
What do
Now,
you
I'm doing it with you now.